Welcome to the CMO Spotlight. And today I am so thrilled to welcome Katie Williams, who's the CMO of J.M. Smucker Company. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here, Joe.
I love having you here. I'm excited about this conversation. So I wondered if you could first tell us a little bit more about J.M. Smucker, the company. Many of us know that the brand Smucker's jelly, but obviously there's a coffee division, there's a frozen handhelds and spreads division that's maybe most familiar for the name. There's a pets division and then a sweet baked snacks division. So if you could just tell us a little bit about the company first, and then we'll jump into a little more detail.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, J.M. Smucker is next year in 2027, it will be 130 years old. So
Wow.
let's first start with that. And I think one of the most important things about the company is it really does respect that history and that heritage and has an amazing portfolio of brands, like you mentioned. The parent brand Smucker, which includes the jellies and jams, and is still some of the highest quality product that I've seen. It's so exciting to get to know. I'm pretty new to the company, so get to know some of the history and the heritage behind the beginning, but also some very cool new ways to express those products in amazing new brands like Uncrustables, for example, that's in our frozen handhelds and snacks business, which is just a fast growing brand that has endured itself to so many different households around our country. And then in coffee, we have, you know, historic brands like Folgers that are just, continue to be bright spots in that category, or new and up and coming brands like Cafe Bustelo, which is a brand that has its own unique, heritage rooted in Latin culture. And then, partnerships with Dunkin' Cafe to bring, Dunkin' into, stores around the country where people can enjoy that amazing, coffee brand in their homes. And then, also our pet business, which we talk about being a food company. We not only feed humans, but we feed pets too,
Mhm.
and also very important family members of our households, and dogs and cats. We got two great, our biggest brands there are Milkbone, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with as a dog snack, and then Meow Mix, which is the brand that just has such an amazing, iconic, campaign and a product that is some of the best out there. Which, as you know, cats ask for it by name.
I love it. I love it. So here's a quick curveball question. How much peanut butter and jelly and coffee have you consumed in the last 3 months since you joined Jam Smucker? Is it more than usual?
I definitely like to spend some time getting to know not only the people in the company, but the brands and the products. So I've definitely eaten. I love peanut butter and jelly. I always have. But I've definitely started to, partake in a lot more of the varieties and flavors. And then obviously Uncrustables, which is a great way to also experience those high quality products in peanut butter and jelly in that very convenient uh, sandwich form. Uh, I've gotten to know more and more about those brands as well. So it's been great. It's been a great experience
Um,
getting up to speed.
I saw a story that maybe you all planted and produced that professional athletes love Uncrustables, and it's like the go-to food when they're on the road and they're traveling and that kind of thing. So Uncrustables has gained this cult status with pro sports athletes, I think.
It has, and I love the way you put it, cult status, because the brand itself started with the thought of making, obviously a sandwich that everyone universally loves, even more convenient, but still with the highest quality of bread and peanut butter and jam inside, to bring that just unbeatable experience that Crustables brings. And it was such a hit with it originally intended, because it is frozen, and the uniqueness about this experience is you take it from frozen to thawing, which typically takes about 30 minutes to an hour. and you have a perfectly portioned and a
Hmm.
perfectly textured PB&J sandwich, which is always kind of something that everybody wants to try to do. What's the right combination? What's the right, texture of the bread? And Uncrustables just does it in an amazing way. And so originally it was thought of as, made it's perfectly made for the lunchbox occasion. You give a kid an Uncrustable in their lunchbox
Yeah.
in the morning, and by the time lunchtime comes, it's perfect and it's ready for them to consume. It's got a great, balance of protein and delicious jam. And so it just really is a great
Hmm.
snack. Well, apparently athletes, thought that it made
They like
sense.
protein, they like
Yes,
a little bit of carbs, and a little bit of sweet.
exactly.
Yeah.
And because of the way people are embracing brands now, you learn more about your brand than you ever thought you would, just by listening and all the social platforms. And you thought, you meant one thing to people, and you learn you mean something completely different.
Mhm.
So, people who play golf love to put it in their golf
Mm,
bags.
mhm,
And,
mhm.
if they're doing 9 holes, by the time they get to hole number, let's say 6, it's ready to go. Or, football players, we definitely see that they consume quite a bit during practice. Or,
They eat a whole
baseball.
box by themselves.
Absolutely. Baseball players aren't just, chewing gum in that dugout.
Yeah,
They're also eating Uncrustables. So yeah, it's been a great ride to kind of experience that cultural connection with more than what we thought for that brand.
that's fun. Well, so let's talk a little bit about your role as CMO. Maybe you can even do it in the context of your team. Kind of what are the groups within your team, and how does that work from a CMO perspective?
Yeah, well, the great thing about Smucker is one of the most important things for our company is our people.
Hmm.
And I have a marketing organization that includes people that report directly into me and my role as the chief marketing officer, but also have a broad range of marketing team members that sit within the businesses as well, and really
Hmm.
partner to pull together not only enterprise capabilities and skills. So on my team directly, I have most of the enterprise related marketers. So our head of media in integrated marketing planning would sit directly on my team. Insights and analytics sits on my team. We have an in-house studio and design team that also sits with me, and we work collaboratively with the rest of the marketing organization,
Hmm.
which sits what you would think in the kind of traditional brand environment. So our VPs of marketing on each of those categories that you mentioned, plus all of the team members that support those brands individually.
Awesome. So I'm curious to just hear about your path to this role, because as we mentioned, you've been in the role around 3 months, but you started, I think, your college career at Purdue, where you studied neurobiology,
Yes.
and then you went to work in business, and then decided to go back and get your MBA from University of Michigan. So I wonder if you could just give us the quick, tour of. I know you spent a huge chunk. You started at P&G, but you spent a huge chunk of your career at Kraft, which then became, split off Mondelez, I think in 2020, 2012, I think it was.
Yeah, it was. Look at you.
And, yeah, and then you stayed at Mondelez for a long time too. So just give us a little tour of your career.
Yeah, so you're right. I did. I started all my undergrad academic career was in neurobiology. So I was a scientist and loved science, and mostly because I'm just a person that's naturally curious, and I love just the practice of putting curiosity to work in that way. And so I spent the first couple of years of my career at Procter and Gamble, I did research in hair care and really enjoyed it. But while I was there, I understood the power of brands and marketing at the center of that organization as a tool to drive business growth. And that just really, I got bit by the bug in that moment, decided to go
Mhm.
back so I could really better understand the business world and marketing specifically. Had an amazing time at Michigan, and then started my career in marketing at Kraft in the food industry. And so I lived in Chicago for about half of my adult life, working in amazing, both in traditional brand P&L roles, where I either led individual brands or innovation or portfolios as I got further and further into my career, working on iconic brands like DiGiorno or Jello or Cool
Mm,
Whip or,
mm,
California Pizza Kitchen. And then I also did some great enterprise roles. So Kraft was one of the early adopters of developing a CRM
mm,
portfolio and investing in creation and development and activation of 1P data as a way to connect with consumers directly on recipe and content marketing. So I led that organization for some time, also did strategy across the organization. And ultimately, when we decided to spin off our snacks business and create Mondelez, which ultimately became Mondelez, I was excited about the opportunity to work globally. Mondelez was going to have a global
mm,
footprint. The traditional Kraft business was more North America focused. So moved over to Mondelez, had the experience of doing a huge spinoff like that.
mm, mm.
And then worked globally for some time. So spent some time in developing markets like China and Russia and Brazil. Expanding the amazing portfolio of our cookies and crackers brands in those markets, understanding how to take equity and translate it into different markets and categories with different insights, as well as innovation pipelines, that kind of thing. And then about 6 years ago, what was at the time GSK Consumer Health gave me a call and they said, "Hey, you have had the experience of being part of one of these major spinoffs,
Right.
and you have about 20 years experience in traditional CPG. We just happen to
And
be
science background too.
and a science background." Exactly. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
We just happen to be spinning off a small little portfolio, and I put it in quotes, small little portfolio of brands that we've collected from multiple pharma companies, like the combination of Pfizer's consumer portfolio, GSK's, and Novartis at the time. So it was an amazing portfolio of brands that was going to be spun from the parent pharma company, but they really needed to learn how to truly be a consumer facing, business, and solely a consumer facing business. So I took those experiences that I brought from not only leading through that kind of change, but understanding how to build brands with the consumer first in mind, and took it to what then ultimately became Haleon. Really enjoyed that experience. Had a chance to take all the learnings that I had to date, leverage that to transform the capabilities and the focus, and build that. I had both P&L and enterprise marketing responsibility there, which was fantastic. And then recently got the call from Smucker. And I think the reason why I decided, I think the journey that I've had just kind of showcases, one, a willingness to sort of lean into change, to have lots of new experiences,
Mhm.
but also a continuous learning mindset, where I really try to make sure that I stay with a healthy dose of humility added to my experience, so that I'm always looking for new opportunities to learn.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. So actually, that leads me to this question, which everybody has a superpower. So I'm curious about what your superpower is, and maybe it's related to curiosity, maybe it's something else. You can tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I talk about my superpower in a couple of ways, but it boils down to definitely I am a tremendously curious person, but what
Mhm.
that does is that makes me very comfortable in uncomfortable environments.
Mm,
So I think that my ability to, one, enjoy discomfort in a way that unlocks growth is definitely a superpower. And I don't just keep that for myself. I try to create environments and support my teams such that even if that's not their superpower, they can feel comfortable kind of leaning into maybe new spaces or places where they're not comfortable, because they recognize that they're going to have the support of a leader that really values learning and
mhm.
values the growth that can come from that type of mindset.
So I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that you either wish you'd gotten early in your career, or maybe you'd give to a young marketer that's just starting out.
Yeah. Well, I would say the piece of advice that I got early in my career that I was lucky enough not only to get, but to continue to follow over the years, which I think has led me to this point, was just the my willingness um, to chart a different path. So
Hmm.
early on in my career, I was asked to go leverage my analytic skills coming from a science background into a unique experience that was going to require me to move to Boise, Idaho for like 6 months.
Okay,
And
fair.
I was like a new marketer, and nobody in marketing did that. It was like
Right.
sitting with a customer and helping them do kind of a category appraisal and leveraging both the consumer understanding and analytic skills to kind of recommend a category, transformation in partnership with the sales team there. And nobody had done that before. And I was just like,
Hmm.
why are you sending me away? Like, I want to stay on the track with the rest of my peers. I want, I think I'm going to lose ground. If I go here for 6 months, everybody's going to forget about me.
Hmm.
And I remember my boss said, look, you're lucky enough to work on some of these brands that have been here for almost 100 years. And I guarantee that some version of these brands will likely be here for another,
Right.
100 years. And so, but what won't always be there is these unique opportunities that build a set of skills and experiences that you can carry with you for the rest of your career. And I just really, connected with that thought that, taking the opportunity to go on a different path, to maybe explore something that hasn't yet been explored, but
Mhm.
get the growth and the learning from that you can then apply later in those places that are,
Yeah.
the traditional paths and the traditional opportunities. It was just career changing for me. And I continue to do that, continue to seek out those opportunities. And it's allowed me, honestly, through so many cycles of change in the industry that we've been, to continue to be able to stay, um, to not only stay relevant, but to stay curious.
Hmm. I love that. So, what are some specific values that you either want to demonstrate as a leader, or maybe you would even demand those values for anybody to be a part of your team?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that most people who I've worked with will recognize this quote, but I talk a lot about empathy and the importance of empathy, both in leadership as well as how we build our business and connect with
Hmm. Hmm.
consumers. Empathy, though, is the way I describe it is the combination of curiosity and humility. And
Hmm.
so, humility being recognizing that maybe you don't have all the answers, or you don't know the specific information, or you're not familiar with this person or the way that they live their lives, or this consumer and the choices that you're making. um, um, but then humble enough and curious enough to go find the answers, right?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
that combination of humility, recognizing when you don't know everything, maybe you're not the smartest person in the room, with curiosity to go find out some of the answers or bring some people along who might have some more expertise than you, to me is what makes one, our job fun, but makes us as effective as possible. I was just
Hmm.
telling somebody today, I was talking to another CMO, and we were just kind of sharing thoughts on how we are. We're both kind of early in our journey and onboarding in new companies.
Hmm.
And I said, especially now as people are trying to figure out this new world fueled by technology and AI, and if I ever find myself that I know more than anybody in the room on such a new and
Right.
and uncharted world that we're in, boy, am I in trouble, right?
Yeah, you're in
Because
the wrong room.
I
Yeah,
am
right,
in the
right, right,
wrong room. And
right.
so for me, that kind of combination, that empathy that requires humility and curiosity, I think is for me the most important thing.
That's great. So here at Setup, we're marketing matchmakers, and that we bring together brands with agencies that can kind of fill gaps in capacity or capability. And so we live in the space in between. We're not on the client side, on the brand side, we're not on the agency side, but we live in that space in between. So we've put a lot of thought into that relationship between brands and agencies. So I'm just curious how you, obviously you're relatively new to J.M. Smucker, but just generally, what's your philosophy on working with agencies?
Yeah. I, My philosophy is the incredibly important partnerships, and regardless of what type of agency, whether it's a traditional, which quote unquote traditional creative agency, a media partner, a technology partner, an insights partner, or someone
Hmm.
who's all of
Hmm.
the above, which most of them are today. Um, what they bring to the table, hopefully, if done well, is that outside perspective,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm. Hmm.
sometimes when we're in these companies with all of the requirements that are on us today, you can forget to sort of pick your head up, look outside, and understand
Yeah.
what's going on in the real world, right? So our agency partners really are an amazing source of that sort of external, perspective, that that provocation that you need to think differently,
Hmm.
or that just
Hmm.
the awareness that you is required for you to stay on top of in terms of how quickly the world is changing, and the new ways consumers are connecting with our businesses. So it's important for that reason. It's also important as many of the agencies now that we're talking with today, as I mentioned previously, are able to really get deep in a particular subject matter
Right,
that
right, right.
maybe you need to learn now and quickly, and you can't afford to build the capability internally right now. And
Hmm.
so having a partner that has that deep expertise that can help you start to build a new capability is also incredibly important, particularly right now where things are moving so quickly,
Right.
and the requirements on new capabilities are so high.
Well, and to that point about bringing outside perspective too, every day you're working on CPG, but sometimes it's nice to have an agency that works on automotive one day and travel and hospitality another day, and they can bring some ideas and insights from other industries or other clients that would apply to your business.
For sure, absolutely. And I think, we have a healthy balance even at J.M. Smucker of capabilities that we do in-house and that we think,
Hmm.
are industry standard and that we should be able to do efficiently and effectively internally. But I am also a big proponent, and we continue to invest in the places where we say, hey, that maybe is not our area of expertise. We don't intend it ever to be, or it's new enough where we've got to partner with someone to help us build this capability quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that leads me to my next question, which is, are there specific disciplines of marketing that you feel we should own in-house because they're core to our business? And are there other disciplines of marketing that you feel I really want outside perspective or outside expertise, and I don't want to own that because it's not our core competency?
Yeah. you know Depending upon, uh I think the answer is yes. But those things change all the
Right.
time, right? So had you talked to me, I don't know, 10 years ago, I might have said, hey, I need someone who is an expert in social to help me build this out. Now, God, gosh forbid, any of our marketers don't really have a good understanding of the basics of how do you interact in kind of this social and creator led environment, right? So it changes as the development curve of some of the new ways
Hmm.
of connecting change. um, and so right now, I think people are trying to figure out, for example, how much do we build or buy when it comes to the agentic space?
Hmm.
Do we
Hmm.
build capabilities in house to help fuel our insights and learning capabilities, our production model? Or do we work with partners externally because they're just going to be better suited to do that, or they
Hmm.
have more
Hmm.
data available to them to train and fuel the competencies of these agents, right? So I think we're all trying to figure those things
Yeah.
out. Today we might say, yeah, let's work with partners to do that, but with a path thinking about potentially what portion of that what might make sense to bring internally in the future.
Yeah. And I've asked that question over 100 times, and the answer is usually different from every conversation because in your company, you might have a huge CRM and marketing automation team. And so you don't really need that externally, or you might not and really need that externally, or paid paid media, you might, outsource that because you don't have a large or strong team internally. Or if you have a really large team, you just don't need that as an external partner.
Right.
So I think it varies wildly from company to company and team to team.
For sure. For sure. I think the interesting thing with that is just there's so many new skills required, new and old and traditional skills required to build brands in a sustainable way, right?
Hmm.
And both for the short term optimization and for the long term health of the business, you have to either build or buy the capabilities required
Hmm. Hmm.
to kind of navigate what is a much more complex, environment in which we, operate in. And so I think being comfortable with that mix, I think, is the most important thing. There's probably not a company that's going to be able to or should do it all, right?
Hmm.
But what are the things based on where you want to win and how you want to win that you think are important to do either in or out?
Yeah. So, how do you demonstrate the value of marketing to the non-marketing functions within the organization or the rest of the company, who sometimes fancy themselves as amateur marketers?
Yeah. Yeah, everybody does. Everybody, and honestly, I get excited when people want to talk about marketing or maybe have some
Right.
marketing suggestions, partly because none of us are, we're all hopefully we're all thinking that there's more we can learn and do. And but what I would say is what I found successful in demonstrating the value of marketing is first and foremost, um, you know, really finding those shared KPIs.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think where people maybe go astray is if they're in an organization as a marketing lead and they're prioritizing measurement on things that really aren't connected to driving the business value, um, it- you're really going to be, I think it's really going to be hard for you to connect into the broader, cross-functional organization to say, hey, here's where here's how we're creating value. So I think aligning on what those shared, KPIs are and ensuring that you can demonstrate, the ability to not only measure and track, but deliver against those KPIs are an important part of being able to show the value. And I think that can't be too many things. It has to be, a short list of things that you're
Hmm.
all really focused on. It can't be too complicated. There can't be 20 steps to, connect it back to the core value delivery. And it has to be something that not only you can track and measure, but you can optimize along the way, and people kind of understand what the KPI is and the benchmark is that you're trying to deliver against.
Hmm. So I'm curious if there's a campaign or a program, either at J.M. Smucker or maybe in a past life since you haven't been there a long time, that taught you a huge lesson, either because it was a flop and you learned something you really needed to learn, or it was a huge success that maybe you'd like to emulate again in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, well, one of the reasons why I came to Smucker is they have been doing such a great job of brand building, particularly in the area of creative excellence recently. There's some phenomenal campaign work that's been done on Folgers recently.
Mm.
I'm so proud of some of the work on Crustables in terms of connecting with culture, and then Cafe Bustelo just launched a new game face campaign as we're getting ready and for one of the biggest sporting events of our time happening right on this soil. So really
They're
excited
coming here to
about.
Atlanta. Everybody's so excited because the World Cup begins here in Atlanta in June. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm lucky enough not only to inherit some amazing brands, but also some amazing some work and creativity
Mm.
and bold ideas going out in the marketplace. But the one that comes to mind when I think about something that I learned the most from is when I was leading the Sour Patch Kids brand.
Mm.
And Sour Patch Kids was coming off of almost about 10 years of straight just growth, double digit growth, and I was moving on to the business at that point. And the first thing that came to mind is, oh crap, like how am I
Right.
going to
It
keep
can
this
only go
going?
down from here.
Yes, like, how am I going to keep this going? Most of the expanded distribution had already been, chased after and won. There was a pretty healthy innovation pipeline that was, continued to be successful. The advertising campaign and the brand strategy was pretty tight,
Mhm.
and consistent over the years. And we were heading into a period of time where it was going to be harder and harder to find that level of growth. And so, one interesting fact that had come out from my onboarding period was that there was a certain group of consumers, in this case, Hispanic households, that were driving the majority of the growth on that brand. And I asked the question, why? Do we know why? Why are those households disproportionately driving the growth? And at the time, no one really knew the answer.
Mhm.
There was a lot of hypotheses. There was a lot
Mhm.
of question, but nobody knew why.
We don't know why, but we're just happy it's happening.
It was just how, because
Yeah.
again, it was
Yeah.
multiple years of growth. You didn't
Yeah.
have to think about that stuff. It
Yeah.
was just like you woke up and it was growing. You just had to
Hmm.
continue to sell it. And but we were at the point now, if we wanted to keep growing, we needed to ask those types of questions.
Yeah.
So we we started to dive into it a little bit, and what we learned is that we actually had a woman on the team who was originally from Mexico, and she was in our innovation team, and she had said, I think I have a strong hypothesis why. And she
Hmm.
brought in the next day just a ton of products that she had bought from a store that was mostly catering to Hispanic households. It was a lot of different candies, and all the
Hmm.
candies were common in that most of them were in some sort of jelly or gelatin form.
Yep.
They had high flavor intensity. There was usually like dual texture. They were
Yeah.
layered with things like sugar or
With
tahini or
tahine on there. Exactly.
yes,
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
and she was like, "This is why. This is just basically the mainstream version of the types of candies and sweet treats that
Right.
people in Hispanic community have been eating for years, for
Yeah.
generations."
Whether you're from Guatemala or Venezuela or Mexico or any other Latin American country, that's a very familiar form factor.
A very familiar form factor, a
Yeah.
very familiar sensory experience, a very familiar intensity, and
Hmm.
and it just unlocked one again that culture of empathy.
Hmm.
Humble enough to ask the question why. I don't know why
Hmm.
this is happening, but curious enough to go find the answer. And that started to unlock really a much more intentional focus, not only on those households for growth, but it fueled our insights. The
Hmm.
insights work we did. It fueled the innovation pipeline moving forward. It fueled the channel strategy. It fueled the pricing strategy. It fueled the packaging design. That we had up until that point, we didn't have any of our creative was even in Spanish language or anything
Hmm.
thereof.
Hmm.
And so it just changed our whole approach to how we thought about the growth trajectory and potential, and how we were going to grow for the business. And we continued on that trajectory of double digit for years to come.
Wow.
And I think at this point we're able to make a case to double the size of that business over the next 5 years when I was there. And we're able to do that. So what I learned from that experience is, one, that humility and curiosity, but two, what I think was most important in that is we were able to move quickly from hypothesis to strategy because we had a really diverse team, people
Hmm.
from all different backgrounds and experiences that felt open to talk about their experiences and bring that
Hmm.
to bear when it came to building the business. And so I have since then really, really tried to build teams that are as diverse as possible, that bring all kinds of backgrounds and experiences, and then create an environment where they really feel free to share that as part of
Yeah.
our strategy and brand building approach.
Who knew that diversity of thought and opinion and culture makes a difference, especially when your consumer runs the gamut of different cultures and experiences too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So now I'm learning for the first time about pets. and being a pet parent. I've been a pet parent in the past, but am not now. And it's so fun to one, on that business, you have a mix of people who are dog owners and cat owners, or maybe had them as a child, but not as an adult, or, and really learning, not only taking that personal experience to bear as we develop the strategy, but learning from each other and our experiences, to help make decision making go a lot smoother and quicker, because you're drawing
Hmm.
both from insights and experience at the same time.
Hmm. All right. I have two quick rapid fire questions that aren't related to marketing, but just for fun, to wrap things up. The first is, what is a quote or a movie or a sports team or a book or a piece of art or a band that inspires you? And what is it about that thing that inspires you most?
Yeah. So my husband and I have a quote that we say to our sons, every morning before they go to school. And I don't know who said it, or if we just said it. I don't know, but we say it all the time. And it's, that we say this: you're not better than anyone, and no one's better than you. And we say that to them every day. And it's that combination of humility and confidence that we want to instill in them, that, you make sure that that you need to treat everyone with respect, and, with kindness and with
Hmm.
care, but also that you're a unique and special individual that deserves the same in return. I just love
Hmm.
and I try to treat our consumers that way.
Hmm.
When it comes to building our brands, I try to treat my colleagues that way when it comes to partnering, on our business. And, hopefully I'm able to pass that on to my kids one day as well.
That's a modern, in some ways, a modern translation of the golden rule, right? You do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Like you want to treat people with humility and respect that you also should expect from them.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. The last question is, other than your family, which is an easy answer, where do you find joy outside of work?
Yeah. It's so funny. I love all these memes and videos about, group chats. Because I've got a ton of group chats, and each of them are their own special, like, community and environment, whether it's my girlfriends or my work friends or my mom friends. And I find a lot of joy and inspiration from those, although some people will say they're the worst. I pretty much enjoy them. I consume a lot of content, so I lot of documentaries, some historical, some not. But that really helps me kind of tap into humanity in a way that's important
Hmm.
for me, and then, for what I do. So recently I just watched a documentary on W.E.B. Du Bois, which was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, on PBS. So I really love watching, that and getting inspiration from that. And then I am a, amateur interior designer, so I do enjoy
Mm.
just like getting my creative, juices flowing when it comes to kind of thinking about new ways to elevate spaces. So
Okay, I got one quick bonus question for you. Is there a brand that you've never worked on that you really admire? And what is it about that brand that you admire most?
yeah, um, I it's interesting. I think that Invisalign recently is one that
Hmm.
just is so interesting to me, that it just completely upended a category.
Yeah.
Um,
No more the old school braces with the mouth gear and all that stuff have kind of gone away.
right. And also just helping to kind of normalize that piece of self-care
Hmm.
in such a way that, yeah, sure, you can't see it, but yeah, you can also see it. And so and then the partnership and expertise that it took, to engage the gatekeepers and the dental offices to build out that brand, I just would love to learn more about the journey that they went on to build that, really disrupt a category, create a
Hmm.
new that required new behaviors both by the end user and by the expert, was really, I think, really, really cool.
Yeah, and it's a good, interesting, B to B to C example too, right? Because to your point, you're selling it to the dentists and the orthodontists, but you're also selling it to the consumer for them to ask for it. And so it's an interesting,
Yes.
that is a fascinating brand. And I
Yes.
think there's, there are knockoffs now too that have taken that as success and tried to run
Yeah.
with it.
And I
So,
got to imagine the technology and the data and audience targeting required to build out that business in
mhm.
today, because it's a more recent brand. So the way that it built out is probably similar to, if you think about developing countries that have much more sophisticated mobile networks, because they never had the original technology to
Right, right,
and
right, right, right.
infrastructure to deal with, right? So what is it like to kind of build out a business like that and have those capabilities? But that's kind of where you're starting from, which is, I think, really cool.
It is really cool. All right. So Katie Williams is the Chief Marketing Officer for J.M. Smucker Co. Katie, thank you so much. This was such a joy to have this conversation with you.
Happy to be here, and thanks so much. I appreciate it, Joe.